Hello and welcome to the Illuminate podcast. I am your host, Brian M. Truskowski with Illuminate. Today, my host is Phillip Beverly. Phillip is an associate professor of political science at Chicago State University, CSU, and he is currently serving as an assistant vice provost at the University of Illinois at Chicago, UIC. He has taught at CSU for the past 29 years, and he also teaches in the Honors College at UIC, courses in surviving the zombie apocalypse and the dystopian television, and we're going to talk more about that soon. Phillip has served almost 5 years on active duty at the United States Air Force, which is fantastic. And also, he is a certified training leader in the Mankind Project International, a men's organization dedicated to the teaching of emotional literacy and empowering men to missions of service. He has led trainings in the United Kingdom, Israel, South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, and Canada, as well as across the United States. As an experienced and skilled facilitator, he has more than 20 years of experience in his own personal growth work. Phillip, thank you so much for being on the show with me today.
Thanks, Brian.
Absolutely. So as people are, I'm sure, curious, tell us a little bit more about your experience in teaching poli-sci at University of Chicago with the dystopian and the zombie apocalypse. This is interesting stuff.
Yeah, I've taught politics for a long time, and it's all the government stuff and institutions and whatnot, and that's okay. And if you don't keep up with where the students are, you're gonna, I think, be unfulfilled. And I know that I'm interested in the genre, the zombie genre. And I thought, okay, what's the political side of this? And I started kicking around some ideas with the course, and I talked to the dean there when I got to UIC. And he was like, well, we're experimental here. Let's try something. And I found that there is a lot of interest if you can move away from the solely entertainment aspect of the material, right? So you can look at it through the lens of, say, English, where you're looking at the narrative. You can look at it through sort of public health, where you talk about spread and that kind of deal, disease control and that. You can look at it from the sociological perspective, the psychological perspective, philosophy. There's all sorts of human questions there. And that's the point that I try and get across to the students, to be really critical in how they look at it. Don't just consume the entertainment for entertainment's sake, but what are sort of deeper messages and elements and symbols that are present that they can sort of wrap their heads around. And that's kind of cool. On the dystopian television, wow, that was really creepy. I just taught that this past semester. And right as the pandemic outbreak is happening, we get to a show called Containment, which is about a pandemic outbreak. And the students' affect just shifted from, I couldn't tell if that was real or fiction because of what we're living in. And I was like, okay, note to self, no more pandemic stuff in the middle of a pandemic. Do the other dystopian sorts of topics and issues. But again, it's the same sort of thing, getting them to sort of think about what are the things that as a culture we wrestle with unconsciously, if you will. What are our fears that have sort of been unresolved, right?
Yeah. Well, that in 1984, I mean, the text 1984, I mean, I'm sure that's a whole conversation in itself right now, which is off topic. But regardless, yeah, I just want to say thank you for bringing an educative and sort of contemplative perspective to something that people typically justify as entertainment. So thank you for doing that.
Absolutely.
So, all right. So are you ready to dive into the questions at hand?
Let's dive in.
All right. So the first question, this is my favorite one, is what are 3 things that do you find important that you want to share from your heart that you don't hear the world discussing very much? And we've already kind of hit one, but just keep going if there's a few more things that are important to you that you want the world to know
about. There's a something that we know but we don't really talk about it much. And I'm sort of disturbed about it. And it's violence against women. And I have two daughters. One actually turns 18 tomorrow. So my daughters are both adults. And I fear for them in the world because they're women. And how is it that women can go missing? How is it that they can just sort of disappear and not be seen, and we don't have a greater concern for that? I mean, there's something about how disposable they are that's an element of the patriarchy that, we gotta do something, I think, as men first, to really address that, because that's a vulnerable population that we've made vulnerable, and that we got to stop. We got to stop. So that's one that is pretty much constantly on my mind. The other is we talk about but don't take any action with climate change. And I'm got more years behind me than in front of me, obviously. But my older daughter's expecting in September. And when I found out, it was like the moment that she was born, where I had this enormous like joy, like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm watching my child be born. And my next thought was, oh my God, I'm gonna die. Because the next generation had arrived, and it really, my own mortality struck. And so when she told me that they were expecting, I had that same sort of reaction. But what was in addition to that is, what have I done to make this better for my grandchild? And in terms of climate change, what have I done? Have I talked about it enough in my classes? I'm one of those professions where I get a platform to say things. And have I done that enough? Right? And I know climate change is this huge issue, and maybe the planet is giving us a timeout here to recognize that. I mean, we've seen CO2 levels drop to 2006 levels, and we already knew it was a crisis in 2006. But just from the pandemic, we see that we are going to have to do something here. And it's not going to kill us to do something, but we're going to have to do something. And so I asked myself that question: what can I do? What contribution can I make? Is it just educational? Is it just in my recycling? Is it just in the, this how I choose to travel? And am I just being more conscious and more aware? Is that going to be enough? Or do I have to go beyond that? And I just want people to know we're all going to have to do something here. And then I think the third thing, I'm really struck by the pandemic and our reaction to it. And I see that it's been stressful for everybody, right, around the world. And it seems like this could be, or if you're a bit more dark about it, could have been a unifying event for humanity. Because I don't know that we're equalized. I think we're equally vulnerable. Unless you have some natural immunity to COVID, you get exposed to it, you could be at risk, right? And so can we see the humanity in others, right? My partner is Persian, right? And so Iran has been really impacted by COVID-19. It hasn't been helped by its government, which is not the best government in the world. And I can see the country and the people differently. They're not the government. They're people who are struggling, who are suffering, who are vulnerable, just like the people in my neighborhood, the people in my state. We had 5,000 people in Illinois die from COVID. We've got 60,000 cases or whatever it is. it's serious here. This is not a joke. The thing that I think we miss is our opportunity to grow up. This is, if nothing else, shown me that as a country, the United States is really still very much an adolescent. When there are people that are protesting, I want to go, I want to do, in the midst of something that could endanger my 80-year-old parents, no, I'm sorry, no, I can't. And my struggle is, how do I connect with that person who could be a threat to me? So those are I think things that I really would want people to think about is, how grown up am I in the midst of some chaos? Can I approach this maturely, or am I having sort of an adolescent response? And I would say that, my partisanship would probably be showing here, but I think the president has demonstrated that sort of petulance around something that is this serious. So.
Yeah, and I just want to say I appreciate your sort of perspective and looking at it from a sociological, like, adolescence, like the way that certain people are approaching this could be perceived as being more of an adolescent behavior as opposed to more of a mature adult. Like, okay, this is what's happening. How are we responding to it? And yeah, this isn't the best, but I'm helping participate and toe the line so that we all have a healthier perspective, from environmental to health sector to everything. And I would say that at the outset of this, I agree with you. I saw a lot of more humanitarian stuff happening. And more recently, there's been some racial experiences that have been happening in this country. And it's just like, this sort of destruction needs to happen before rebuild can happen. And we're still sort of in that destroying before we can rebuild, in more of and not say a kumbaya sort of way, but you're right though. What can we learn out of this? How can we sort of grow and become a healthier state and planet out of this? So I love that perspective. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, if I had a want, and this is probably ironic coming from a political scientist, right? And it's, don't politicize everything. And yet everything is political. So there's this really crazy paradox in my mind, because politics isn't government. Politics is who gets what, when, and how. And it starts the moment we're born. I mean, I ask my students in class, so how many of you have siblings? And can you say that you and your siblings were treated exactly the same in your home of origin in every situation? They're like, absolutely not. I was like, and where did you fall? Oh, I'm the oldest. And as the oldest, were you treated differently than the youngest? Well, yeah, I had to. That's politics. And so we learn our politics in our families of origin, right? Wherever we're raised. The government stuff, that's just government stuff. So politics is everywhere, but we don't have to politicize everything that happens, even though politics is everywhere. So I wrestle with that, and I would really want people to sort of to think about that and not make everything a battle. Sometimes we can actually agree on stuff if we're people who generally disagree on stuff. We don't have to disagree for the sake of disagreement.
Yeah,
I don't know how to communicate that effectively to people.
I mean, I'll say it another way. Well, one, thank you for that. We don't have to politicize everything, right? And it's just like politics and government are separate, and people I shoehorn those together. But also, I can be friends with and family members with people who have opposing viewpoints to what I believe, and I can still love them. And in fact, it behooves me to have people in my life who have opposing viewpoints to me, because it helps me become a more educated and wise and compassionate individual, as opposed to the sort of the narrative that's happening recently is I'm only going to surround myself with an echo chamber so I can only hear my own beliefs echoed back at me. And that's not healthy in any way, shape, or form. And so thank you for just saying that, especially right now. Like, I'm sort of sitting, I'm choosing to sit in the middle of all of this, hearing people from the left, from the right, from the conspiracy, from the all of it, and saying, okay, I hear all of you, and I'm just going to choose to sit in the middle. I love all of you, and this doesn't mean that I have to take sides with all of you.
Right.
You know, but I can hear what you have to say and become educated and just listen. So
Yeah.
that's a huge lesson I think that we can take. You know, I invite people to take out of this. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, I think the echo chamber harkens back to that sort of adolescence, the high school, you know, the cliquishness. You only hang out with the jocks or the nerds or the this or that, and we see that sort of reflected in pop culture, in movies and television, right? But that's a very adolescent way to be. The world is made up of difference. People who think differently, who behave differently. And can you be in relationship with them without compromising your own integrity, whatever that looks like, but seeing their humanity? You know, I think the thing I've been most struck by with people as I venture out and I've got the mask on and, you know, I've got hand sanitizer in my pocket and all that stuff, is I just have this like visceral reaction of people's fear.
Mm-hmm.
And I just connect with that people are afraid, and I can't protect them and I can't make them safe except to, you know, continue to wear masks and you know, be prudent and socially distance and that kind of thing, but just to acknowledge that people are afraid, and it's okay.
Yeah,
we'll get through it. Yes, people are going to die, and we will get through this if we are smart about this.
right.
And being smart about it to me means seeing each other in our humanity.
Yeah, and just to bring up a previous previous guest commentary who studied nonviolent communication, compassionate communications, like, of course you're feeling this way. You have every right to feel fearful, scared, all of these things, and that's okay, right? And, you know, please, like, you know, and how can I support you in whatever you're needing in that, right? So absolutely. All right, so you want to move on. I know this has been great conversation, and we can wax about this for hours too, but do you want to move on to the next bank of questions?
Sure.
All right. So the next question, this is a little more playful, a little more fun, is knowing what we know now, what unique things would you like to do with friends and family to have them over as social activities? Knowing what you know now, like, what would be different? Or what would you like to do?
As an introvert, I generally don't have like a big circle. I know lots of people, obviously, from what I do, but my sort of inner circle is very contained, right? I think there's a couple of things. Real conversations, real in-person, talk about the stuff that we've never really talked about kind of conversations, right? Because I think there's I think many people, including myself, harbor this belief that there'll always be time, that we can get to that, but there'll always be time, right? And I had two things happen during the pandemic. The sort of short story, when I got out of the military, I came back to Chicago and started getting involved in local politics. And I was working on my first campaign, and the campaign manager, after the campaign was over, said, hey, I'm doing some speaking in some high schools. You want to come with me, talk to kids and, you know, this kind of thing, motivational speaking. And it was there that I learned that I was actually pretty good in the classroom. And it was like a couple months after that that I got my first teaching gig at Chicago State, and I was on my career path, because at that point I had no idea what I was going to do when I got out, right? And he died on Easter Sunday from COVID-19. And I just thought about the randomness of me meeting him and his just genuine invitation to me to do something I had never thought of that led me into a career, right? And I didn't get a chance to ever talk to him about that, how my life had changed from a fairly simple, innocuous interaction, right? Because I talked to him a few months ago. He's got had a radio show here in Chicago, and I was going to go be on his show. And I was like, oh yeah, there's time. And then this. And so those real in-person conversations, need to say it, need to whatever I got to say with folks, I need to say it and know that it might not be more time.
Right.
I think one of the fun things I would want to do in some conversations is talk about TV binging, because I think that we are binging a lot of stuff, and I just want to catch up and talk to people like in person and see in 4-dimensional space their reaction to TV, to stuff that they've been watching and experiencing and sharing that. I've been watching the show that just wrapped up its 4th season that has just been incredible, a roller coaster for me, that is just fantastic. And I guess the 5th season is out in a few months, and I can't wait. It's intense, and just to be able to share that the emotional stuff of that, I can't wait to do that. And it's TV, and since I teach stuff on TV, yeah, I want to talk about some TV. The third thing, having people around. One of the things I actually miss is eating at a restaurant and seeing other people at a restaurant, seeing a big family come in and little kids and the teenagers who've got the ear pods in because they really don't want to be around the adults, and the little ones that are running around, and I just love seeing that, right? And it's been difficult. And I also want to see the people who work in the restaurant. I want to see them. I know it's work. I know it's a thing. I get that. Their job, but I want to see them too in that space, right? I miss that. I miss that.
Well, that makes sense as someone who studies, political science, just like in studying people and studying psychologies and stuff like that. So it makes sense that you sort of miss watching the human interactions, because there's a lot to be gleaned from watching human interactions and all that. Yeah. So I get that. Yeah, it's interesting. And so that's part of what this is about. This podcast is about having people generate conversations, stuff that you and I are talking about. I hope that people continue these conversations, right? And yeah, I just want to highlight what you just said. Like, it's you don't know what you got till it's gone, right? And within that, like, I studied with Landmark for a little bit, and in that's something they talk about. Like, have that important conversation now. Don't wait 2 months, don't wait 6 months, because you don't know. And you don't know how your relationship's going to be impacted for the positive by having those conversations. And so now, like, this is one, video chat are a little easier these days. And so, like, yeah, like, get out there, whoever's listening, if you have those conversations that you want to have with someone, have them. I mean, let Phillip and I be like the catalyst for you to do that, because you don't. So call that person you've been wanting to talk with and just have those conversations. So thank you, Phil, for bringing that up. Absolutely. And then lastly, what's one message from your heart that you want to share with the world? Anything that is sort of like teaming, like, let's say you had a world platform, which you kind of do in some sense, but one thing that you just want the world to know that is important to you.
Stop resisting the thing that should bring us together, right? We are not separate. We live in different places on the planet. We speak different languages, we eat different food, and we're the same. And can you hold the difference and the identical nature of the human experience? We're not different. We are the same. And if I can see my brother and my sister who are very different from me as my brother and my sister, how much better are we going to be as a result of that? How much different are we going to be in saying, yeah, we're different, and I see them, you know? Can we work to see each other and not, play the 2-year-old game? Oh, you're not there, you know?
Right.
If
Right.
I cover my eyes, you disappear. No, you're there. You're there. Can we see each other in our brokenness? Can we see each other in our magnificence? Can we just see each other?
Mm.
Just stop resisting that. Oh no, I can't see them because they're not like me. Yeah, they're very much like you. Very much like you.
Yeah. There's more of us keeping, more in common than we have separate. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
For sure. Well, thank you so much, Phil. So really quick, two last parting things. Is there, if people wanted to get a hold of you, if they had any questions for you, or they want to learn a little bit more about what you do, is there any way they can get a hold of you by chance?
Absolutely. They can always email me. I have an email address, which is the one that you have,
Okay.
PABeverly@inbox.com. If you want to put that on a scroll on the bottom of the screen when you do post-production, please feel free.
Yeah.
And they can look me up at either CSU on the directory or at UIC on the directory, get my email and all that. We're working remotely, obviously, so I'm home a lot and checking email at least 30 times a day. It's just what we have to do.
Yeah.
And yeah, they can reach out to me.
Awesome.
I am on Facebook. I don't check a lot. I am on LinkedIn. I probably check that more, the professional side. I've got a Twitter account. I just don't do Twitter. There's like some block that I have that if Trump can do Twitter, maybe that's not the platform I should use. Because I say, how seriously would people take what I have to say?
Good question. Well, thank you for that. So we'll put all those contacts in the comments below. And then lastly, Phil, any parting words you want to share before we sign off?
These are interesting times, and people say, oh, it's all this uncertainty. And it's like, from the time that we were on the savannah in Africa as human beings, in our first iteration as human beings, life has been uncertain. We have not always been at the top of the food chain. And 3 or 4 or 5 million years later, it's still uncertain, and some microscopic thing can bring us to our knees. It's okay. It's okay. We're resilient. If nothing else, we're resilient. And just find and touch and embrace and just hold on to your resilience. We will survive and hopefully be better for it if we're open to learning the lessons. Whatever the situation is affording us the opportunity to learn, we might just learn some stuff.
Resilience, pay attention, and learn something. I love that. That's beautiful. Thank you, Phil, for being on the show with me. And thank you all for listening. I'm grateful for you to listen, share this message, continue the conversation. That's really what this is about. So thank you all for listening. Get out there, make a beautiful and blessed day. Thank you so much. Take care.